You've just invented time travel, and you do what anyone would do. Travel back to the year 1998. There you find yourself, and tell yourself of the year 2022. There are 3 television shows airing at the same time: Star Trek, Star Wars, and a Star Trek parody. You ask yourself, which of these is best? First you guess Trek, and then Wars. You'd be wrong. Bum, 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 ba-da-dum. Time for Orville Season 3 reviews. Well, my friends, the time has finally come. The Orville is back on our TV screens. Season 3, otherwise known as New Horizons, is finally upon us after what seems like almost an eternity, which was probably only 3 years, but still very, very long. Before I get into this episode, I do want to make a couple of quick notes. If you have never seen The Orville before and you're coming into New Horizons fresh, you haven't seen Season 1 or Season 2, I would be very interested to know your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what you think about it, not having seen what came before. If this isn't your first rodeo, if you're, patiently waiting along with some of us fans, and this is your first foray back into it in a while, I also want to know what you thought. Secondly, I will be going over details of both this episode and some things that have happened in Season 2 particularly, so if you don't want spoilers, you can pop back in after you've watched the episode, or skip to the end to find out my final thoughts on this episode. And without any further ado, let's kick off Season 3, New Horizons of the Orville. We start off with this beautiful tribute to Norm Macdonald. If you are not familiar with his work in the Orville, he plays a character named Yaphet, a jelly gooey life form. Mostly voice, however, he has appeared in physical form at least once, yet to be seen if he'll show up physically in Season 3. So this was a bittersweet moment because, as we know, he's no longer with us, but he did record all of his lines for Season 3 before his passing, which means we've got a full season of Norm ahead of us. Probably, if the Orville keeps going after this, we will not have any more of him, so that's also a downer. Anyways, kicking right off in the episode, if you were following along online with the Orville over these past couple of years, you will know it was originally scheduled to premiere back in March. It was pushed until June. This first 2.5 minutes sort of teaser sequence, whatever you want to call it, was released online a couple of months ago. So if you've already seen that, you know what's going on. It's a wonderful ship battle. It's the sort of a flashback to when the Kalon and the Union came to blows back in Season 2. One of the greatest two-parters of science fiction I've seen in a while. Very reminiscent of the best of both worlds sort of thing. And speaking of the best of both worlds, this is very reminiscent of the start of DS9, where we saw the flashback to the Battle of Wolf 359 from the best of both worlds, from a different perspective. So kind of get you thinking along those lines if you're unfamiliar with how the Orville is working here. So we have this beautiful explosion. Not beautiful for the people on the ship, I'm sure, but it looks good to us. Then we've got a nice close-up of the Orville zooming around. It's got some new effects added, some new texture, some new writing. It looks top-notch. It looks more high quality than what we saw in Season 1 and 2. And Season 1 and 2 wasn't a slouch in and by any means, but they've definitely upped their game as far as the effects go. Then we see here Isaac. He was a Kalon, a robot who betrayed our crew back in Season 2, but then he came back to the right side and ended up saving our butts. I'm saying us and we as if I'm part of the Union. I can neither confirm nor deny that, but I will probably keep saying that. Anyways, it turns out this is a dream sequence, sort of a nightmare of flashback to events from Marcus, one of the children on board, one of the children of Dr. Finn, our chief medical officer, and she had a relationship with Isaac, so her sons also had a relationship with him, which obviously led to feelings of betrayal, which is going to be a core theme throughout this episode in particular. After the credits, we get this nice beauty shot of the Orville here over Earth. Basically, what they're doing is they are docked back at Earth, getting retrofitted, getting upgrades, getting all sorts of new stuff on board, because due to that attack by the Kalon back in Season 2, we're gearing up for some sort of war, most likely. And things are not looking good as far as our ability to defend against them. So we've got to take out all the stops. We've got to ramp up, do what we can. Now, here is Isaac in the mess hall, and this is our brand new character. So if you are new to the series, this is a good entry point for you. She was not in season 1 or season 2. She's coming aboard. She was on one of those ships during the battle, and her ship was destroyed. She's pretty much the only survivor. She and one of her friends, Amanda, were taking a shuttle to escape, and turns out the shuttle was damaged. The only way to launch it was to manually launch it. So Amanda, her best friend here, stayed behind to launch the shuttle, dying for her life. Charlie, the character that we just saw, the new character, not a big fan of the K-Lines. She is not a fan of them whatsoever. And then we see somebody in the de facto quarters of Isaac here. It's basically astrometrics, but it's, for lack of a better term, his quarters. He doesn't sleep, he doesn't eat, so he spends a lot of time there doing sciencey things. Somebody has defaced it with murderer. Who could it be? Well, we are led to believe it might be Charlie. We'll find that out shortly. Now we've got this wonderful shot of Yaphet. He's the one in the suit on the left there, in a brand new alien, the one speaking in an alien language. They're out repairing the hull. Now, Yaphet is a gelatinous being. He isn't humanoid. He's just a blob of jelly. He can fit into this suit and kind of contort himself in different ways. So, interesting alien design for him. This new guy, not sure of his name, not sure if he's going to stick around, but he was interesting. It's nice to see some new alien faces on this crew. And here, speaking of new faces, we've got Charlie. We've got that new alien there. We also have a new small, single individual craft sort of fighter plane, fighter jet, fighter ship, whatever you want to call it. Kind of seems like a cross of the Viper from BSG, sort of like that, maybe a little Delta Flyer-y from Voyager. It's a single person sort of fighter craft. So it seems like they're going to be needing more of these for a lot of the war stuff we've got gearing up for us. Plowing along, this is Marcus, the guy I told you about earlier. Turns out he is the one that put murderer in there. He was close to Isaac. Obviously, he feels betrayed by Isaac, feels, some sort of way about this guy who he got very close to, who then betrayed and almost had everyone he knows murdered, for lack of a better way of thinking, because the Kaylon, being technologically based, view all organics as inferior, and their intention was to eliminate them. That was basically their entire intention. Hasn't worked yet, but Isaac was a part of that. He flipped sides at the very end to save us, but he was trying to eliminate all organics, including ones he was close to, so people aren't going to be okay with that. So Isaac took that to heart, even though he's got no emotions. He, at least in the literal sense, as far as we as organics are concerned, right here, he's leaving some memories, leaving some suggestions for upgrades. He's leaving what I would think of as some sort of last will for reference, because as we find out in the very next moment, he ends himself. He deactivates himself, as far as he is concerned, permanently. So for all intents and purposes, he believes he has just removed himself from the equation. He is no more. The ship would be better without him. He is gone. That is his intention right here. And that is the crux of the rest of the episode. This was an hour and 10 minutes, I believe. So quite a brutal way to get back into things. Very, very traumatic, as if you're, on either side of the equation. If you were his friend, obviously. If you felt betrayed by him, you obviously have unresolved feelings either way. So everyone on the ship has to deal with this in their own way, whether or not they liked him or disliked him. It's going to be a hard time for everyone. And I do want to point out here, Marcus, he was a child character. Obviously, it's been a couple of years. He's grown up into mid-teenage years, and he killed it this episode. His acting was fantastic. I do want to give him big ups for that, because you never know with these child actors what they're going to grow into. You could have a Wesley Crusher on your hand. You could have a Jake Sisko on your hand. You could have a Nog on your hands. You never know who they're going to turn out to be. And I think based on this episode, he could be a contender for a great actor going forward in this series. So I do want to give him props for that. We see here, this is the memorial slash funeral type service for Isaac. He doesn't have any customs of that because he's a technological race. They don't do that. Obviously, this service is mostly for those left behind. And as you can see, it's not completely attended. It's not full up because people are not necessarily positive with their feelings for him. They don't know how to feel. They don't know what to feel. You know, it's a hard time for everyone to get past that. They're in the midst of an all-out war with the K-Line. They have one on their ship who was, for 2 years, their friend. Still dealing with those emotions. Claire, who had a relationship with him until he betrayed the crew, not doing so well herself. She doesn't really know what to think. She doesn't know what to feel. She doesn't want to feel, but she determines it's probably best that she does. Then we have this plot twist here where John Lamar, our chief engineer, he's having this conversation with a lady that I assume she's a lady. She's some sort of alien race, so I'm just assuming. And while they're talking, she basically shares with him that her species doesn't view suicide in the same manner, that it's a person's choice because they were not given life by choice, so it's their choice to do with it what they will. He doesn't necessarily agree with that, but while they're talking, he has an epiphany moment, a eureka moment of, oh my God, I think there is a way we might still be able to bring Isaac back. He goes down, finds this computer gizmo underneath all of Isaac's redundant backup systems where tech solution. Later, there's some sort of third tier backup of Isaac's personality, his soul, for lack of a better term, inside there that is possible to bring back under the right circumstances, and it has to be done quickly. Ed goes to Charlie Burke, our new character, who has this stupendous ability to visualize reality in a 4D way, something that not many people are able to do. That's why she's such a fantastic navigator. She's able to visualize these things. Ed goes to her to ask her, you're the only one that's going to be able to go through his systems and reestablish him correctly. She's basically like, hell no. Hell no. I don't like these guys. I do not like these guys. Let him die. He should be dead. What's he going to do for us? I'm going to point this out right here. You can see in the background the classic Star Trek warp effect of the stars streaming by. Just want to point that out. It's very missed in the new episodes of Star Trek. Very missed when they do the hyperspace type effect. I really missed that, streaking star effect. Anyways, while he's trying to convince her, the Kaylon show up and start pounding the crap out of our ship. It's getting fired upon. They need to get out of there. So what do? They find this gas giant type planet, and they're going to head into the atmosphere to try and hide until they come up with a solution, because similar to the Strange New Worlds episode we saw a couple of weeks ago, if they go too deep in here, the ship is going to be crushed. They don't believe that the Kaylon are stupid enough to follow them in, so they have a little time to devise a plan. What's that plan? Well, also similar to what happened in Strange New Worlds a couple weeks ago, and I'm not pouring shade at either of them. These were clearly written and shot and devised independently, because the Orville's been in production for 3 years, and Strange New Worlds wouldn't have necessarily had any script information. So I'm not throwing shade. I'm just saying, if you're watching Strange New Worlds, it's an equivalent, sort of. They load up the shuttle with all available torpedoes, launch that baby into the gas giant, and explode it. Thusly, the Kaylon are supposedly led to believe that the Orville went in too far, couldn't handle the stresses, imploded, crisis averted. They have staved off their destruction for another day. They're able to escape the Kaylon. They weren't able to take out the Kaylon ship. They're still out there. So danger still abounds for our valiant crew. So then we get this really cool sort of cyberspace looking thing where Charlie has decided she is going to reestablish Isaac, not for Isaac's sake. She had a conversation with the youngest son of Dr. Finn, who still actually has feelings for Isaac. He's not teenager yet, or if he is, he's like very, very preteen. And he doesn't like the fact that Isaac is gone. Isaac was kind of a father figure to him, so he is not okay with this. Others are not okay with it. Charlie has decided, for the sake of these people, she will help, not for the sake of Isaac himself. And she makes it in no uncertain terms very clear that she is not doing this for Isaac. She has not forgiven Isaac. She will not forgive Isaac. She is doing this for the greater good. For a brand new character, she has given a hell of a lot of depth. And I do want to just applaud her for that. She's not just a generic new character thrown in for no reason. She is given personality right out of the bat. And if they can keep this momentum up, I think she might be a nice new dynamic for the crew, because it's going to be interesting not having everyone on the same page going forward, especially if we're heading into wartime. Basically, she's telling Isaac the same thing here. Claire and Isaac have this conversation. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, they had a relationship before. She is trying to come to terms with it. He really doesn't need to come to terms with it because he's an unemotional, artificial being. Now, whether or not he does have emotions and it's just not the way we're led to understand them, that remains to be seen. But he's, he thought he was doing it for the greater good, but it seems that his calculations were incorrect. It was not for the greater good. That's basically the gist. Man, I can't talk today. That's the gist of this episode. So what were my thoughts on it? Was it worth the wait for 3 years? Was it a return to form? Was it everything I hoped for? Yes and no. So I want to say there's a couple things that blared out to me as being just far and away spectacular. As I mentioned, Marcus's acting was great. It was fantastic. The ships, the effects, while they didn't look 100% perfect, obviously you're never going to make computer generated effects, even when you're using real models and real sets, look 100% like it exists in the real world. But they were far and away the most realistic looking effects I've seen in modern sci-fi in a while. I say that meaning a lot of the CG effects we've been seeing in other sci-fi shows of recent years, they look beautiful, but they don't have that tinge of reality. They don't look to me as if you could step out and walk on them. They look like an upscaled video game, which is beautiful. It's beautiful to look at, but I don't feel like I could walk out and exist in that world. The Orville does, and I think a lot of that is owed to the fact that they built a lot of these things as physical models. Now, they don't necessarily look like a real world thing that exists, but they look like they have a physicality to them, which is stupendous. The other biggest thing that hit me is the score, the music. It was amazing. I mean, live orchestras recorded a lot of this stuff, and it's just far and away something that adds a cinematic feel to the episode. It makes it feel a hell of a lot more cinematic, like you're watching a movie, which is their intention for this season, to be 10 movie length cinematic experiences. And they really hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, the score, the music, the sound effect, it just sounded amazing. So if you're going to take anything away from it, I would say the sound design, the music, the score were probably one of the best things in recent sci-fi memory. And I want to counter that with the Obi-Wan Kenobi show that's going on right now. Now, I've only seen the first 3 episodes. They're the only ones out at this point. They are not even using, same with The Mandalorian, they're not even using the classic Star Wars music. Darth Vader came back in the last episode. Sorry, spoilers if you're not watching that yet. And they didn't play his music. They didn't play the Darth Vader theme, the Imperial March, any of that. They're not playing the John Williams score. I mean, it's lacking. And the Orville, while not known to the masses for having iconic music that everyone knows, they're adding that flair. They're adding that music, which really pumps up scenes, really pumps up the action, really pumps up the emotion. And I mean, I know they try to tell us that, by using music, it's just emotional manipulation, but hell yeah, it worked for me. It was great. So those 2 things, along with Marcus's acting, were just breaths of fresh air that I've been missing. And I mean no shade against like something like Strange New Worlds, which I'm also thoroughly enjoying at this point, but they're night and day. They're no longer attempting to be the same thing. The Orville is clearly trying to build upon TNG era Star Trek aesthetics while kind of going in its own direction. Strange New Worlds is trying to do a spin on the original series while updating for the modern day. They're both completely different approaches. I'm enjoying them for different reasons, but I think the Orville scratches that itch from, a classic 90s era Star Trek fan that I grew up being, and that's the kind of stuff that I'm missing. It was like a hole that all of these other modern sci-fi series have kind of been, poking into a little bit, but this slots right into it a lot more noticeably. So this was fantastic. There's obviously some faults in it. Obviously it's not going to be the most perfect thing you've ever seen, but if we can keep this momentum going, I think New Horizons of the Orville is probably going to be the best of the Orville we've seen so far. That being said, I obviously can't speak to the rest of the series. It could fall downhill. Obviously, we've seen that with things like Picard. It started out strong and then meandered for 8 episodes. So I do want to give them the benefit of the doubt because I know they've been pouring their heart and soul into this thing for 3 years. 3 years of work to produce these 10 episodes. So I can't wait to see what we have to look forward to. So until next time, like, share, subscribe, give me all your thoughts because I would love to hear what you all think of the Orville, and I'll talk to you next time.